You shouldn't feel anxious, you shouldn't feel that way, you can't feel like that, or it's bad to feel like that, is often things that we have either told ourselves through inner dialogue, maybe even external dialogue to ourselves, and being told by other people. Specifically, you shouldn't be anxious, or you shouldn't be upset, or you shouldn't feel a certain way. And I, in this podcast, am going to talk you through why you should and why it's okay, and hopefully help a couple of you guys overcome a couple of difficult things. The reason I'm changing the format of the podcast a little bit to these argumentative points and maybe discuss in-depth topics on certain things is because I get really passionate about these things. So a couple of ideas for podcast episodes in the future that I have is, let me see here, losing fat will make you happy. You will never achieve anything. I can't do this. I need help. You are lazy, or you can't. And these are things that we've either been told externally by people or internally told by ourselves, which is actually more damaging, because we spend like however much of our day with people, only a percentage of our day, but we spend 100% of our day with ourselves. And so the messaging we're telling ourselves is constantly being heard, and oftentimes it can hold us back quite a bit. But with all of these, like losing fat will make you happy, you will never achieve anything, I can't do this, limiting beliefs, I want to come with a counter argument as to why you can do this, why you can achieve things, and why losing fat won't make you happy, and maybe go down the route of hearing things that you haven't heard before, because typically these are the messaging you've been hearing. So I'm going to argue against those points. And I came to realize this is the style of podcast that I'll be fucking good at and that I'll enjoy, and that hopefully you guys will take a lot from. When I was on a Zoom walk, this sounds silly, but within the Mulligan's Method, the coaching program that I run, we go on a walk together each week. And on that, I get quite passionate about things that we discuss, and get quite passionate about arguing different sides, things that maybe people haven't heard before, and arguing essentially self-belief in people, because I truly want people to believe in themselves in a way that I didn't for years. It's some power that I want to give to people. Essentially why I started this whole thing. I wanted to become an older brother for people who didn't have it, and give unrelenting support to those people to make them achieve things and feel like they could achieve things that maybe they didn't before. But one of the girls on the walk actually said, I love when Oisin rants like this. I have written up my whiteboard, that's what I'm looking up at it as I'm talking. I love when Oisin rants like this. And I was just like, fuck, I absolutely love doing that. I love making people believe in themselves by ranting against topics and things that they tell themselves. So what I want you to do is, if you're listening to this, first of all, give me feedback on what you think about that, what you think about the episode maybe after you listen to it. But before all of that, maybe think of a couple of thought patterns that you've had about yourself, or things that you're struggling to overcome, or situations, if you want to leave a situation in the comments below, whatever it might be. And I will try and help you through it in a certain manner regards to my own personal experience. And that's important too, I think. When I'm speaking on these topics, it's what's worked for me. It's things that I've noticed, and it's my story. And if that's not something that helps you, well then fuck it off. It doesn't matter, right? And I think that's super important, because if you give an answer to somebody and that answer doesn't fit them, and you're saying that that is the correct answer, you're essentially making that person feel bad or wrong, or like they can't do it, or like that they're useless and they're never going to be able to solve their problem. If this doesn't help, well then maybe something else will. And I think that's important part to start on. But in regards to today's episode, essentially talking about you shouldn't be anxious, or you shouldn't feel that way. I'm going to start off with my kind of my own personal story, which would be over the last 3 or 4 years, where I've been really challenging myself with jiu-jitsu competitions, obviously public speaking gigs, and before that, boxing fights, where I really struggled with being anxious. And I'm going to tell you why I really struggled with those situations and how I overcame them and I get better with it. And fun fact, I haven't overcome them. I still feel that way, and I think that that's why it's important to reassure you guys that you should feel that way as well, and it's not something that you should be against or should be getting even more anxious about. So going into my first ever kickboxing fight, I remember I was so anxious, so nervous. I think I was about 16, 15 at the time. It's actually just after I'd lost about 50 kilos. So it was a huge journey for me. And I remember I was really anxious, because in a kickboxing fight or jiu-jitsu competition, it's probably one of the most scary primal things that you'll ever do in your life, because the person across from you is essentially trying to kill you. And what stands in the way is essentially a referee. And the referees at an amateur level aren't really that great. They don't really give a fuck. They're just there to get a paycheck and fuck off. But with that side of things, when it came to my fight, I remember so many times my coach, everybody that was around me at the time, being like, you shouldn't be anxious, you shouldn't feel this way, you shouldn't feel that. And it actually made me fight against myself in those situations, and especially leading up to that fight, where I was beating myself up over being anxious. So not only was I anxious, it was accompanied by more feelings of anger and then fear of I shouldn't be feeling this certain way, and it made me feel more uncomfortable and actually made the anxiety work against me rather than work for me. So when I actually stood in for my first ever kickboxing fight, got up into the ring, my heart was beating really, really quick, my palms were really, really sweaty, and I remember I was shaking, I nearly felt sick, I felt like I was going to cry. Got in, they put the head guard on me and put me in against the guy. I remember looking across from him and I was like, this guy's a big motherfucker. And I thought he was going to kill me. But anyways, I froze. So the first round of that whole entire fight, I didn't even throw a punch. I just kept my hands up in my face. And I remember the feeling of like, I can't move. I was stuck. My hands were glued to my head. And it was one of the scariest things I ever kind of felt, and even to now, it's probably one of the scariest things I've ever been through, and it's actually probably helped me a lot through the things that I go through on a day-to-day basis now, because I always think back to me like, oh, nothing can be as bad as that. But I remember that happened because I was fighting my anxiety and not fighting the battle in front of me. And I was fighting my anxiety because I felt like I shouldn't feel that way, or I shouldn't have that fear. And I want you guys to think about maybe a situation where that's what you're doing rather than fighting what's in front of you, and actually it becomes a bigger giant to overcome, because now not only are you overcoming a situation that you're feeling anxious about, you're trying to overcome the anxiety with it, which I think doesn't happen unless you go through it. So anxiety doesn't disappear until you're taking action, and when you're taking action, it's not that it disappears, you get better at dealing with it. And that's something I've come to realize as well over the last little while, but I'll come into that. But after kickboxing days, I didn't really have a great coach at the time. Like, it just wasn't someone that I really clicked with super well, and I finished up with that. But recently got into obviously jiu-jitsu, and the coach has helped me through an unbelievable amount. And one thing that he said to me before my first jiu-jitsu competition was essentially play your game. And I think this was a moment where a fucking switch just flipped in my brain, and maybe it'll switch in your brain for you guys as well. And even if you're not into sport, it might be something that clicks. And it was like essentially telling me to do it my way and ignore what everybody else thinks. And in that moment, I was like, right, I feel anxious. Those feelings is how I feel. That is the way I play my game. That is okay. And the second that anxiety became a feeling that I knew I was going to feel and that was okay, I stopped fighting against it and didn't have two battles to fight then. All I had was one. And all I had to do was feel those feelings and continue to do the thing anyways, right? Just going back a little bit, so I know I'm going to jump back and forth here quite a bit because, again, it's a personal story and hopefully we'll kind of link in with a couple of things that you guys are struggling with or finding difficult. But regards to anxiety and that feeling and the heart palpitations and the sweaty palms and the shakiness and I don't know, it feels like you're almost like, I don't know, going at fucking 5 times the pace and everything's running through your head, right? It's funny because through my younger years, I used to always watch like kickboxing fighters or boxers and all these people before getting into the ring myself. And every time they were like, oh, in an interview would ask them, how are you feeling? And they'd essentially be like, I'm excited, I'm excited, I'm excited. And this is funny because through therapy, I actually discovered why they're doing that. It's funny because they're not actually excited, or maybe they are. Maybe that's the way they perceive the emotions, but they're actually perceiving the same emotions that I am. But I'm seeing it as anxiety, and they're seeing it as excitement because it's actually a sports psychology trick, which I learned in later years going through sports science myself, and it was techniques that we had learned, and it's reframing the feelings that you're feeling. And there's a couple of different ways to do this that have really helped me over the years. First one is the anxiety, so sweaty palms, the heart palpitations, sometimes the headache, sometimes the racing thoughts, and the shakiness. They're kind of the symptoms I get, and other people might be a little bit different, right? That is the exact same feelings and almost the exact same as if you were excited for something. Those feelings of anxiety of overcoming something are the same things. When we're excited for something, our heart rate speeds up a little bit more. We have them sweaty palms a little bit more. We have that racing, ready to see the thing. And my therapist described it in a way that was actually funny to me. The person standing in court ready to give a sentence to death is actually having the same symptoms and feelings as someone standing up at the top of the aisle on their wedding day, waiting for either their bride or whoever to come up with them. So it's funny how those situations are so similar feelings wise, but obviously drastically different in the way the feelings are perceived. And so in that, when you're feeling that anxiety, them sweaty palms, A lot of sports people used to scare me because they're all like, oh, I don't feel anxious. That doesn't happen. They do. They just perceive it as something different. And all the time, whenever I heard someone saying, oh, no, I'm fine, I'm not anxious, or it made me feel worse because then I felt like I shouldn't be feeling that way. And that's where this comes in. You shouldn't feel anxious. You shouldn't feel that way. It's like, no, it's okay to feel anxious. It's okay not to feel okay. It's okay to not feel confident in the situation. It's okay to not, or double guess yourself, that them feelings are okay. And the more we focus on changing them, that's another battle that we have to add to our list to tackle before we actually overcome the thing that's making us anxious in the first place. And so I think if you can remove that and kind of see it for what it is, it becomes a huge amount easier. And that's what happened in my second jiu-jitsu competition. After my coach had told me the aspect of play your own game, which was essentially do it your way and not worry, because every other coach would tell me to try slow down my breathing and get real calm and take deep breaths. And what that would do is actually just lead me to thinking about the situation more and making it even more difficult for me, because in my thoughts I was trying to defeat the anxiety and not the opponent in front of me. Meanwhile, this time I was actually just trying to hype myself up and do it my own way. It didn't matter if I was doing it wrong, and feeling the anxiety and acknowledging it and being like, yeah, I'm anxious, I'm nervous. And I'd say that to my coach and he'd be like, that's okay. They're feelings you're supposed to have. That's normal. And I performed so much better within that jiu-jitsu competition in comparison to the other one. I stood on the mats. I ended up choking the guy out and came back. I lost the following 2 fights, but I didn't care as much. It was fine. The anxiety wasn't something I had to battle. It was something that I had to feel and then go ahead and take the step forward with. There's that book, Feel the Fear and Do It Anyways. It's the most genius thing ever, and I've never read the book. I've never read the book. I've just seen the title. That's it. And I live my life by that now. And I think so many guys that probably are obviously here for my weight loss content and stuff don't feel the fear and do it anyways, like regards to body confidence and stuff like that. And I'll touch on that in obviously the episode that I have coming up regards to losing fat will make you happy, because I don't believe it will. I think regards to body confidence and stuff like that a lot of you guys are looking for, you'll not achieve that body confidence and you will be anxious about the way that you look, and you will probably feel a little bit nervous about the way that you look on a beach. But the thing is, you will consistently feel that until you actually take your t-shirt off on the beach and live through that anyways, until you feel the feelings and do it anyways. And then the feelings, they don't disappear, but they become less so, because you've experienced it and you know how to get through it and you know that you're going to be okay. Essentially, anxiety is your body telling you that you're not going to be okay. So the more times that you show yourself you are going to be okay, or the ways that you can tell yourself you are going to be okay, the better. And this leads into my stories with regards to public speaking. So public speaking is the number one fear in the world for most people. It's the biggest fear, standing up in front of people. And my first talk that I did was actually in front of 500 people, I want to say, in around there. Don't over exaggerate it, but it was definitely 500 or more. And it was absolutely mental. Again, heart rate going 400 kilometers an hour, sweaty palms, didn't want to be there, felt really anxious. But what I had was the tool of not fighting against the way that I should feel. And my brother, everybody were like, oh, you shouldn't feel anxious, or don't feel that way, you'll be okay. That didn't help. That doesn't help me. And it might not help you. I would much rather someone say, yeah, it's normal to feel anxious, that's okay, rather than saying, no, don't feel that way, you'll be fine. Like, that doesn't help. I don't want anybody to solve my problems, and I don't think that helps anybody. And I think a lot of mental health issues as well, and people maybe struggling with stuff, that's why people struggle to talk. That's why people struggle regards to even having a conversation with someone that maybe is struggling with their mental health, because they feel like they have to solve the problem. People don't need their problem solved. That's not what you're there for. You're there to listen. And that solves 99% of people's problems, by understanding and hearing the person. I think hopefully actually that's what this podcast does to some of you, and you realize, holy fuck, Oisin gets anxious sometimes too, and he struggles with things and he finds things hard, and I do, and so I'm normal, and I can do what he has done, or I can do more than what he has done. And I think that that's hopefully something good that everybody can take from this. But leading into the talks anyways, with regards to like my chest going, my heart rate going, I felt really, really anxious, but I did it anyways. I got up there, I spoke, and one thing that helped me do that, which was also a discussion with my therapist, and hopefully this helps a couple of you guys with something that's difficult as well, was planning something after. No matter what happened up there with my feeling anxious and feeling nervous and feeling whatever, I had that fear of, again, not being okay, because people are going to laugh at me, going to think I'm stupid, or going to think that the things that I have to say aren't worth it, maybe I'll freeze. And sometimes that can be perceived as final. Like, the failure can be perceived as final. Even losing kickboxing fights, jiu-jitsu fights, it's always something I've struggled with, and maybe you guys have struggled with regards to going to the gym, feeling like a failure. When you tell yourself and can show yourself that that feeling isn't final and that's not the end, it becomes easier to deal with the anxiety. It becomes easier to deal with the fear, because then it's only a moment. the feeling, the anxiety is only a moment in time. After, I'm going to be okay. So it's only going to be for that hour long talk that I'm going to feel that, and after, I'm going to be okay. How I did that for myself was I was visualizing at times what I was going to do after the fact. I was going to finish my talk, and no matter what happened, if that talk went bad, if that talk went good, I was going to go for a meal with my family. That was it. That's all that mattered in every situation. So in any situation that I go into where I'm anxious now with jiu-jitsu competitions, whatever it might be, it's like, what I'm going to do after? Well, I'm probably going to go to Nando's and get a meal with my friends, my family, my girlfriend, whoever. Right? And then that kind of defeats the thing of failure being final, because it's not. My life continues. Nobody really even remembers. Nobody even remembers the jiu-jitsu fight I had 4 years ago, or the kickboxing fight I had however long ago, or the jiu-jitsu competition I had 2 months ago and I got absolutely strangled in it. Nobody remembers that. People forget about you fairly quickly. Nobody cares about you as much as you think. Maybe your close family members and stuff. Well, at least I hope they do. But I don't think you're as important as you think. And so them small little fuck ups or failures don't really mean a huge amount, or don't really matter a huge amount. And I think that that's what people get caught up in, is them small little losses, and think that they're world defining or life defining, when actually they're forgotten within a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks or 4 weeks, and it doesn't really matter. And so proving to yourself that if you get to that point where it's over, it's gone, you've gotten past the anxiety, that's okay, you're going to survive. You're still going to be able to go for your coffee whether you freeze or you don't freeze, or you're still going to be able to go to home and have your coffee after you get to the gym in the morning time, whether you mess up every exercise, or whether you find things difficult, or you don't know what to do when you're in there. That's okay. I think that that's something that really, really helped me throughout doing those talks, and overcoming the anxiety. And actually, none of that required me not to feel anxious. I still felt anxious no matter what. I still felt those feelings, and that was okay, because trying to fight against those would have left me in a position where things were a lot more difficult to overcome. And then that kind of regards to setting the end point. I think what happens once you've been through it once, right? And this is a really, really good thing for maybe people who've gone to the gym and are still feeling anxious to go the second time. Or for me, with public speaking, and maybe some of you guys will have that in the future as well, or whatever it might be, that you're feeling this anxiety around. Once you get through it, once you feel the fear and do it anyways, and you will actually do it a lot better than what you think you will. Like, any situation will actually end up likelihood better than what the worst case, because your brain is always going to focus on the worst case scenario. The worst case scenario almost never, ever, ever happens. Actually, never happens. Right? The worst case scenario that you have in your brain never, ever, ever happens, because it's perceived as the worst to prepare you for that. And our brains did that back in the day to try and protect us from lions, animals, bears, all these sorts of things. And it's like, okay, fuck that. You're not going to die after doing the presentation, but that's the fear in your head. Nobody's going to care, but that's a fear in your head. And that fear is often perceived a lot worse than all of the other outcomes that could possibly happen. Like, the fear in my head surrounding public speaking was, I could freeze, and I'm going to freeze for my entire talk. I'm not going to know what to say, and then I'm not going to talk, and I'm going to get off and walk off crying. Right? So see how bad that is? Maybe parts of it might have happened. Like, maybe I could have frozen. I did freeze, and it was okay, and I continued on speaking. I just continued on trying to do my best. Maybe I could have ended up crying. And none of the other things would have all accumulated to my life being over, which is what the worst case imagined scenario was. But anyways, back to the point. When you go through that situation once, and which is why I recommend people feel the fear and do it anyways, you will actually realize that the fear, the anxiety, those feelings are part and parcel of it, but also what leads you to perform quite well. So in situations where people are telling you shouldn't feel anxious, X, Y, Z, if I wasn't anxious for a situation where I was going to a jiu-jitsu fight, or if I wasn't anxious for my talks, I wouldn't do any work towards it. I literally wouldn't write out the presentation. I just would have nothing to push me to go and do that. If I wasn't anxious or nervous and X, Y, Z about my weight, I wouldn't make any changes to it. I wouldn't try and become healthier, right? It's not something that happened. If I was going to the gym and I wasn't anxious or wasn't nervous about it, I'd go in there and I'd do all the exercises wrong. Because at least when you're anxious and nervous about it and you have these feelings, you're going to be more aware. It's a really good thing that our body has, is that adrenaline to really switch us on in those situations. Our memory becomes better, our focus becomes better. Why wouldn't you want those? Why wouldn't you want your memory to become better, your focus to become better, your ability to move your body to become better, your fitness to become better? All of that becomes better with the release of adrenaline, but yet we don't want it. Because we have these feelings of heart rate faster, palms sweaty, racing thoughts. But they're the symptom of performing better, having more fitness, having better memory, like all these things. When adrenaline kicks in and this anxiety gets really, really hard, that's what happens. That's essentially what's happening. Our body kicks in this survival mechanism of almost fight or flight. The worst one that you can have is possibly freezing. Do you know what? It's actually not that bad, because if it happens once, then you learn ways not to allow it to happen again. I think a lot of people freeze because they're trying to fight the feelings, not fight the battle in front of them. in every situation. But yeah, so what I want to say to you is with feeling the fear and do it anyways, once you get through it, then you look back at the feelings that you've had, and it's like, okay, the first talk that I did was an extreme success. I got asked to go back and speak at the main stage the next year. It was at IFS, and I'm extremely proud of that. And I worked my ass off for it. But all of those feelings that I had in regards to feeling anxious, sweaty palms, heart rate racing, really, really nervous that I was going to mess everything up, actually led me to having a good performance. So now it's not anxiety leads me to fail. It's anxiety and all those feelings that I've had previous and the story that I told myself led me to succeed. So see how now that isn't a bad thing. Whenever I face those feelings now, I always think to myself, fuck, right, it's not that bad. If I'm feeling that, that means I'm going to have a good time. That means I'm going to probably do things quite well. It means I'm going to work. It means I'm going to think. It means I'm going to perform, right? And I think that that's where these high performing athletes and high performing people start to perceive that as excitement, because it's like, I know when I have these feelings, that's what happens. And I think if you can start really thinking about that yourself, well, then it's not you shouldn't feel anxious, it's you should feel anxious. You should have a certain amount of, and I'm always hesitant in saying anxiety, because I feel like anxiety is the label that people give themselves. When you give yourself a label of, I have anxiety, that becomes you something. Your personality is something you can't get rid of, and something that you're stuck with, and something that's negative. Like any labels that we give ourselves are generally negative, or associated by ourselves as being negative, as holding us back from certain things. Even if I had anxiety, and I have plenty of symptoms of it sometimes, right? Even though I wouldn't want to be called anxious, I wouldn't want to be told that I have anxiety, because it gives me that thing of not being able to overcome it and something holding me back. Meanwhile, I actually think it's fucking positive that I have those feelings, because they work in my favor. It's the same as ADHD and stuff like that. Like, a lot of people will be like, I have ADHD or XYZ, and I might have it myself, but I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. You'll probably notice me jumping back and forth with stories here. Caffeine impacts me opposite to what other people. If I drink caffeine, I essentially get really tired and sleepy, and so they would be symptoms of ADHD. But for me, that doesn't give me any bad outcomes. It actually gives me good outcomes, and so I don't want to label myself with it. It helps me work and do shit tons of work sometimes. I take the positive from it, and again, going back to the first quote that my jiu-jitsu coach had told me, is I play my game. And playing your game is so, so key here, because your game's not wrong. It's yours. The way you do things is yours. That's okay, right? And I think knowing that that's okay stops you fighting against your own game and playing somebody else's. Because anytime in jiu-jitsu, any competitions or anything that I've ever done, trying to do it someone else's way doesn't work for me. And so I have to do it my way. Like some people, regards to presentations or slides or whatever it might be, might prefer to have all the writing up on screen. For me, that doesn't work, so I don't do it. But if I listen to everybody else's way of doing things, well, then I play their game and not mine. And so this is what I kind of want to talk to you. And it's not, like, anxiety is hard to overcome, and it's not something that is easy in any manner. And I'm not saying that on this, and I think that that's important. It's difficult. It's really, really hard. And a lot of the situations I've been through have been really, really difficult to go through with those feelings. But every single time I've tackled it, I've come out the other end better. I've come out the other end being able to conquer more, being able to feel better in myself. And that's where I think the true confidence comes from, having the courage to face those feelings, not having those feelings. Because if you didn't have those feelings, it wouldn't be a challenge. It wouldn't be a level up on what you've done before. Regards to going to the gym, if you weren't feeling anxious or going to the gym, you wouldn't have anything to gain from it. You genuinely would not have anything to gain from going to the gym for the first time, because it'd just be walking. It wouldn't be an achievement. Again, it comes back to that aspect of the challenge, the difficulty of something essentially shows what the achievement is, or tells you the level of achievement. So, for example, a person who is in the Olympics running marathons, running the normal marathon out on the road isn't going to be that difficult for them. It's something that they've done thousands and thousands and thousands of times. So it's not an achievement. Do you think they feel achieved after running a half marathon? Probably not, right? Or running the full marathon? Probably not. They feel achieved for running it in the fastest time ever. And so for you, if you didn't feel like going to the gym was a challenge, you wouldn't have those feelings, anxiety and stuff, to switch your brain on and to make you perform better. You wouldn't need to. Your brain wouldn't need to perform better, so it just wouldn't. You wouldn't have those feelings. And so with that, then it wouldn't be an achievement. But the fact that it is, that's just as much of an achievement as someone who's maybe going out and running 6 marathons, right? And so achievement again, and this thing, I think it's super important to realize with regards to anxiety, is start with the smaller achievements first. Because again, even though they're smaller maybe in comparison to other people, I just think comparison again is that thief of joy. But regards to the comparison, start with yours. Start with your achievement. It doesn't have to be anybody else's achievement. Going to the gym might not be an achievement for some people. It's an achievement to some. It was an achievement for me 10 years ago. It's not an achievement for me now, because it's something that I do and something that I've done for years. And so it's a lot easier for me, but doesn't mean that it's not an achievement for somebody else. So I think with those situations, when you can start adjusting the mind frame of like, oh, that's not good enough, or I'm useless. It also reduces the anxiety, because rather than thinking to yourself, oh, I should be able to do this, everybody else does it, and I shouldn't feel anxious doing this because everybody else just goes up in the gym. There is this, I shouldn't be anxious. It makes things worse. You're fighting that battle again against yourself. And it makes no sense, because then every single battle ahead of you, which you're trying to fight, like going to the gym, makes it even more difficult to do because you've already wasted your energy fighting something else. So I think, regards to the achievement aspect, is do it at a level that's an achievement for you, and tackle those things. And even if it is a smaller thing, it's getting you up to the next thing, because eventually going to the gym like me won't be, and it might be lifting a certain amount of weight, XYZ, where you get your achievements from. But I think it's super important for us to chase achievements and to push ourselves out of our comfort zone, because there's comfort in that uncomfort. At the other end of that uncomfort that we're facing, there's 100% comfort there. I think that that's an aspect that I notice when maybe my happiness starts to drop a little bit, or maybe I start to not feel as good, is when I haven't challenged myself with things in a little while, when I haven't proven to myself and pushed myself out of my comfort zone. When I'm sitting on my comfort zone doing things that I know I can do, I don't get anything from it. It's no achievement in there. And I think a lot about life is collecting these achievements and collecting these things and making these memories. And often these memories that we make are in the uncomfort, are things that I'll remember, like the kickboxing, are things that I'll never forget, doing that and scared and freezing up and not being able to fight back, and the guy kicking head off me. Fun fact, I did actually win in the second round, but before that I was getting my head kicked off me. And I think that that's huge for people, and I think that that can be powerful when you realize you don't have to fight against yourself or the way that you feel. And if you're someone that doesn't get anxious about things, it doesn't mean that that's not the right way. But for people who maybe do struggle with that a little bit more, see it as normal, and again, switching your brain on and finding things a little bit easier. But yeah, I think questioning to yourself in a situation where you're feeling quite anxious would be, ask yourself, with regards to anxiety, why, what negative does it give you? Like, what is the thing here, or what way of feeling, how does that not help? Because most of the time it kind of does. It makes you want to drop out, it makes you not want to do things sometimes. But when you start to realize that it's actually on your side and not against you, it's huge. And sometimes, again, the framing of even family members, XYZ, saying you should be okay, or you shouldn't be feeling this way, XYZ, it makes things, I don't know why I keep saying XYZ. If I say that one more time, I give everyone full permission to just reply underneath the comments, just XYZ, XYZ, XYZ. I think it's just easy with it. Even with, actually fun, even with in these podcasts and these small little things, I think I'm a little bit better after the first one, but the first one was like, oh, everybody's going to hate it. It's going to be shit, XYZ. I think everybody's going to hate it. Once I got through it, I'm like, oh, I don't really care. Once I've done it once, it's a little bit lower, a little bit more, a little bit anxious this time around, sitting down with a thing in front of me and making sure I don't get caught up in my words or say something that's going to offend people, I think is the main thing. But I think doing it over time will make it a little better, and again, feeling those feelings. But yeah, anyways, that is this short episode regards to you shouldn't feel anxious. I believe you should, and I believe it's something that benefits you. It doesn't take away from you. I think it can stop some people, but it doesn't stop you if you realize it's your greatest weapon. It's the thing that turns your brain on. It's like, if I told people, if I went into a pharmacy and I set up a drug that could increase your heart rate, increase your fitness levels, increase your ability to think and function and to visualize, and increase your ability to complete a task, everybody would buy it. And what would that drug be? Something that causes the spike in adrenaline, probably causes a spike in heart rate and cognitive function. Anxiety can do that for you. Some people do have a shutdown state of anxiety as well, and I've often had this as well, and this is maybe another coping mechanism that might help a couple of people. Just before I finish up, and something I was told that was negative as well, I don't believe it is, it's helped me in many different ways, was shutdown mode, where I kind of go and I close my eyes and essentially I feel like I can't move a huge amount. But in these situations, and this happens to me when I get really anxious about things or find things really, really difficult, I used to suffer with that a little bit more years ago, but not anymore. Not as much, because I don't see it as suffering. I think it's something that benefits me. Now when I'm in those situations, I visualize over and over and over and over and over again the situation that's in front of me that I'm afraid of, that I'm anxious about, and all the different ways that it can go. And so for me, with my jiu-jitsu competition, when I'm doing that, I'm actually visualizing techniques that I'm going to use, techniques that maybe are going to be used against me, different situations that could happen, maybe someone choking me out, what I'm going to do, I'm going to tap and I'm going to get out. And I think this visualization is actually good, because then you've rehearsed, essentially, a million different ways in which something can happen. For example, if you're anxious about going to the gym and you're in your brain, you're visualizing, oh fuck, I could drop a weight on someone, I could look like an idiot, someone will laugh at me. You become more able to deal with that situation, because when it happens, or if it does happen, which it likely won't, if it does, you visualize how to deal with that situation because you've been through it before already. And to see how then the anxiety isn't against you, it's with you. It's something that's worked for me a huge amount in regards to my talks. I literally will visualize me freezing and then being like, what am I going to say if I freeze? And oftentimes it's just like, yeah, I'm feeling anxious, I'm nervous, guys. That's why I'm freezing a little bit. Just give me a second. And seeing how, as well, not being afraid of the anxiety and not being afraid of feeling these certain feelings as well stops you from hiding them. Because the biggest fear for a lot of people is actually, fuck, someone's going to notice I'm anxious. Someone's going to notice I'm nervous. So just tell them. It's normal. Jesus. Just say, yeah, I'm nervous, I'm anxious. Then there's no weapons against you. Then you don't have to hide anything. Then you're less anxious. Then you're less nervous about things. The second you tell everybody else in the room that, they have no weapons against you. They have absolutely no weapons against you. I remember in school, I used to be really self-conscious about my teeth. I have one tooth that's a little bit further pushed back, and it'd be something that I would have got a little bit of slagging for or whatever. So whenever in a situation I was feeling uncomfortable, I was like, yeah, my teeth are pushed back. And it's like, what is someone going to do? Slag me off for that? And I've just said my teeth are pushed back, or I have a pushed back tooth. Yeah. How are you going to slag me off for that? Yeah, people on Instagram or Facebook always, or any of my videos, slag me for my haircut, being like it's like a bowl haircut or it splits in the middle, Noah's parting ways or whatever. Abraham Lincoln, what? It's not Abraham Lincoln. Whatever your man is, someone's gonna laugh at me saying that, anyways. But parting ways of the ocean in my forehead because I have that cow's lick, and it's like, yeah, I don't care because I've told people I have it anyways. My hair is shit. Who cares? Then there's nothing that can impact me, and it's the same with regards to feeling anxious. Disarm it by acknowledging it. If you step into a situation and feel anxious, feel nervous, the best thing you can do is tell a person in the situation how you're feeling. So going to the gym, you might be telling the gym manager, you might tell the person at reception. Going for your first talk, you might stand up on stage and actually be like, yeah, I'm feeling anxious, guys, really nervous. This is the first one of these that I've done, and hopefully you'll have a little bit of patience if I do freeze a little bit. See how then nobody in the room is going to think that you're stupid or you're silly, because they will be feeling the exact same. And if anything, 99% of human beings actually want to help people, want to make other people feel good. 99% of people want to help other people feel good, and most people will feel better having made you feel more comfortable. And so people can do that and understand you more when you feel that they just want the best for you, essentially, and you become more real. You are more real when you can admit exactly how you're feeling, and that's something with me. I'm not afraid because I've done it for so many years, and I realize it helps me because now I'm no longer hiding my anxiety. I don't have to hide the way I'm feeling, or maybe the things I'm doing. If I say I'm doing it, yeah, guys, really nervous, really anxious, my hands are sweaty, whatever it might be. Saying to my coach, even at jiu-jitsu competitions, so yeah, I'm really anxious, really nervous. So I don't have to hide it from him. So it's not something, but if someone's telling you you shouldn't, and you can't feel that way, and you're telling yourself, or whatever it might be, you try and hide it, what happens then? You have to hide the anxiety, you have to hide the symptoms, you have to hide the sweaty palms, you have to hide the sweaty underarms, you have to hide the fast breath, the quick talking, the fast heart rate, the freezing, the stuttering. Yeah. How much easier would it be if you just told them, I'm nervous? How normal is feeling nervous? Everybody's felt it sometime in life, and they tell you they haven't, they're lying, or else they live a miserable fucking life. Because imagine not being able to feel that. Imagine living your life and never feeling anxious ever. Don't think that's something that you'd ever like, ever something that you'd ever want. Although it is something I wished for many years, and now realizing that it's my superpower, not so much anymore. It's something that really benefits me. So yeah, as I said about 5 minutes ago before I got into a little bit of a rant with you guys, hopefully this episode hits home a little bit for you guys. If anybody has any questions or anything, leave them down below. Any situations you want me to talk through or give advice on similar to this. Again, I'm not a fucking life coach or anything like that, but I'll give my experience, my story, and hopefully help a couple of people out. Or any statements that maybe you tell yourself or you've heard before, or maybe whatever it might be. Even the situation is losing fat will make you happy is a thing that you hear online a lot. So if there's anything you hear online a lot and you want me to do a podcast episode or segment breaking it down and talking through it and giving my opinions on it, I'm more than happy to. But yeah, thank you for listening, and catch you in the next one.